Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second day of the Advisory Commission on Special Education. We are delighted to have all of you joining us this morning. We have a pretty packed agenda, so we will jump right into it. I will call the meeting to order and ask Denise to facilitate the roll call.
Good morning. Chair Tostin.
Present.
Vice Chair Graff.
Present.
Commissioner Estes. Commissioner Hamilton.
Here.
Commissioner Liu. Commissioner Lopez. Commissioner Michaud. Commissioner Notch.
Present.
Commissioner Oyakawa.
Here.
Commissioner Ruiz.
Here.
Commissioner Snipes.
Present.
Commissioner Sorter.
Here.
Commissioner Tapalian.
Present.
Commissioner Wilkins.
Here.
Commissioner Ding.
Present.
Commissioner Tuggs-Jargle. That's roll call.
Thank you all. Please join me in the salute of the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic Vice Chair Groff, will you please review the Day 2 agenda?
Thank you, Chair Tostin. I'm very pleased to be able to welcome everyone to Day 2 of the Advisory Commission on Special Education. I believe that we'll start off with some announcements before we get into the agenda. But item 8 will be the presentation on the Individualized Education Program template that has been work group has been working on, and they will give us an update and next steps related to the new template. After that, item 9 will be planning for the ACSE Recognition Award, followed by a break. And then item 10 will involve presentations by either commissioners from our liaisons with the State Board of Education and the Director of State Special Schools. And at item 11 will be the report from the Special Education Director. Shiloh Duncan Bursarell will give the presentation on behalf of the Special Education Division. Lunch will follow that, and then we will reconvene at 1 o'clock with item 12 for general public comment. And this is comment invited on any matter, including items not on the agenda. Item 13 will be committee study sessions. And then item 14 will be reports out from the committee and agenda building for our October meeting, followed by item 15, which will be general public comment. Again, public comment invited on any matter, including items not on the agenda. And then we will adjourn around 2:45 of the meeting for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving into communications and announcements, I just wanted to share with anyone following along online. After lunch, when we move into committee study sessions and report outs and agenda building, those timelines will be based on the conversations that we have and may not adhere to the time frames allotted in the agenda. So if we are efficient in our conversations and finish early, we will simply move on to the next item. As some folks have travel commitments that we want to honor. And so we will do our best to adhere to those timelines, but just wanted to be transparent that the afternoon agenda may move quicker than the time slots on the agenda. I want to pause and solicit any additional communications or announcements from the commissioners. Looking at you, Rachel.
So wait, do I just announce it?
Go ahead and announce it.
So I graduated high school in June, and starting in September, I'll be officially a college freshman at Stanford University. Thank you all so much for the support, and yeah, I'm just really excited to meet new people and to learn just so many more things. Yeah.
Rachel, thank you so much for sharing. We are all thrilled at your announcement and accomplishment, and wanted to take a moment just to acknowledge Rachel's service on the commission, her advocacy for inclusion, bettering our system for students with disabilities, and sharing her own perspectives and narratives, and addressing stigmas around what students with disabilities can accomplish, and how they can contribute. I know I have been so impressed and inspired by your contributions on the commission, and we've learned a great deal from you and look forward to seeing where your journey takes you. Commissioner Graw.
I'd also like to congratulate Rachel, but I believe Saran also has an announcement about her recent designation. Saran, would you like to share your announcement?
Saran, I don't believe is with us today because she's engaged in preparing for that next step, but we look forward to hearing from Saran directly at the next meeting. But just highlighting the accomplishments of our commissioners who are also students. We always want to take a moment and acknowledge that. Any other communications and announcements from commissioners before we move into our agenda? All right, with that, we will move into item 8. We are pleased to have, and I'll say this affectionately, my friends and colleagues, Mindy Fadig and Heather DeFeed with us this morning to share an update, and I believe the first public presentation related to the IEP template. There was a process that took many months and many hours and involved a number of perspectives and hard work. And we are thrilled to see the outcome of the work group and find out how we can support the work going forward. Mindy and Heather, I yield the space to you.
Great. Thank you, Chair Tostin. I really appreciate it. And good morning, everybody. I'm seeing just a blank screen. So I just want to make sure it's not my tech. I think you're sharing on your end is what the message we got. But good morning, everybody. And just really excited to provide an update. You'll see a lot more people that were on the panel listed as presenters, but they helped behind the scenes to create this presentation. So today you'll have Heather, myself, and Kristen, you will probably be joining us. I don't see her on here yet. I think I'm just waiting for the slides to show.
They're showing, Mindy. Perfect.
Okay, so go ahead and go to the next slide. Again, we're here to give you an update on the IEP panel background. Our charge was for the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence to really build upon the work from the first IEP work group. Our charge was to select a small expert panel, and thank you, Commissioner Graff, as a panel member. And we had 2 years to continue the work and build upon it for usability and for potential recommendations and implementation on next steps. Our report was officially released on June 28th to all the chairpersons of the relevant subcommittees of the Legislature, the State Board of Ed, CDE, and the Department of Finance. So I'm just going to real briefly go over the process, and then I'm going to turn it over to Heather to actually go over some of the template that was created. And of course, at the end, we'll have an opportunity for questions and answers. So the next slide, please. And the next one. So this will give you a brief overview of our process over the last 2 years. July to December in the first year was really working with the State Board Executive Director and selecting the panel members to make sure we get a cross-representation to really dive into the work from different perspectives and experiences. January to June, we had our panel members meetings, full panel member meetings, as well as some ad hoc meetings. And that really was focused on reviewing current state template, reviewing other states' templates, getting to know what works for other states and what works for our state, as well as honing in on what do we really want the template to achieve? What are our guiding principles? And we're going to go over that in a little bit later as well. The second year, July to December, that really, we had, again, full panel meetings. We had some ad hoc meetings. We really finalized the sections of the template. And this whole time as well, we're going back and forth and getting some legal feedback, working with our state partners, as well as revising the template. The template you're going to see today is version 18 over 2 years. So version 18 got us to the point of getting all the feedback from the focus groups, which you will see that we just did January to June, where we selected the focus group partners. We had RTI, which is a research institute group. They conducted all the focus groups for us and collected all the surveys as well. And then we ended up with the template that we have today, based on all the partner feedback, the panel work, as well as recommendations from the field. Next slide. The partner feedback that we got, these are just some of the agencies represented and the folks that represented those agencies. I do want to express tremendous gratitude to the commissioners on this group, because quite a few of you were on the focus groups and or provided feedback via the written survey. So every single feedback comment, every single survey, the panel reviewed, every single one. And we make sure with intentionality, and that drove our revisions in the template, is what we are hearing from the field. So again, extreme appreciation. The next slide, please. This is actually our IEP expert panel members. So again, Commissioner Graff, thank you, an integral part in working through this process the last 2 years. But you can see it spans everyone from boots on the ground, teacher in the field, all the way through our higher education partners to ensure we are making sure we're containing that alignment from 0 all the way up to post-secondary and what works from different people's perspectives and experiences. Also a note that 80% of us are parents with students with disabilities, including myself. So we also are not only coming from what our title is and our professional role, but many of us, the majority of us, are actually parents with students with disabilities. So we brought that lens and that experience as well. So Heather, can I turn it over to you? And welcome her from High Quality IEP. She's going to take us to the next round.
Good morning. I don't see KU. These were her slides. I just want to pause to make sure she didn't join.
Yep, I don't see her either.
Okay.
So go ahead.
All righty. Well, good morning, commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity. The guiding principles for the IEP panel, as Mindy alluded to on the previous slide, were really thoughtfully developed and probably the crux of our time together. And we really had a focus on making sure the templates were collaborative and team-oriented, that they really set the stage for those collaborative conversations in developing an IEP. And that those forms drove a process that kept us grounded in being student-centered and assets-based and inclusion-oriented. So as we know, the forms kind of give some guide rails or guidelines for how the meeting is to unfold and things for the teams to consider. And that was really important to us, that it was student-centered, assets-based, and inclusion-oriented. And most importantly, we want to make sure our students with disabilities are achieving their outcomes. And so we really tried to focus on making sure the template supported that and was outcomes-driven. As we get into the actual template itself, I'm just going to overview the sections. We had the first section. Typically now there's a lot of demographic and technical information on the first page. And so we really wanted to set the stage of being that student is at the center of the IEP meeting, and that it's focusing on their strengths, their interests, and their needs. We really want to make sure that we're honoring what a student can do at the very beginning of the IEP meeting, and that is setting the stage. Oftentimes present levels give a list of, Heather can't read at grade level, Heather can't do this. And we wanted to focus on the things that the students can do during the IEP. So this is the first part of the meeting where it's really looking from both the student voice and the IEP team voice. Next, we added a vision statement. The previous work group had a vision statement. We kept that and kind of refined it a bit after getting a lot of feedback. So really focusing on the vision of the student and for their outcomes after they've completed high school.
And Heather, we need the slides to advance if you can.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, we should be on slide 9. I'm advancing the slides on my computer. So
Yeah. Next
thank
slide.
you so much for reminding me of that. Okay, so vision statement, perfect. And then the student profile and present levels. We really wanted to capture the student as a learner. We felt it was important, especially as IEPs are portable between different schools if the family moves, or even as the student articulates from grade to grade, and really wanted to capture ways that were already working and successful for the student. So the next providers would have that foundation of what worked in the previous context, and so they could build upon that as a student was entering a new context. So we start with the present levels profile, and then the present levels, where we are identifying their areas of need and addressing those. Next slide. Again, there are multiple pages of the student profile and present levels, and again, focusing on what they can do. One thing that we really worked on is the flow of the IEP meeting. And in the current templates, a lot of IEP forms go through the present levels, and then they address special factors. So you might be talking about communication in the present levels and behavior in the present levels, and you get through all the present levels, and then you go on to special factors where you're again addressing any communication needs for our students who are deaf and hard of hearing, or you might be addressing the behavior needs for any students who have needing supports for behaviors. So we've incorporated the special factors into the present levels, so the flow of the conversation is as you're talking about a topic, you're addressing all of the areas, including the present levels and special factors, to make the flow of the meeting make more sense. Next slide, please. And the next, as many of us are familiar with the individual transition plan, we really, as part of our principle and core beliefs of this work group, wanted to highlight a pathway to a high school graduation and a high school diploma. This is assuming a high school diploma regardless of the pathway that the student is going to access that diploma. So we really are trying to set the tone for expecting that all students will have the opportunity to achieve a diploma. Next slide. The measurable annual goals page is probably pretty familiar to most of you. We did break down the parts of a well-developed IEP annual goal so that we ensure that all parts of the goal are addressed as the team is developing its goals. Next slide. Another shift we made were with the supports and services. Many of us might be familiar with addressing the state assessment during the present levels, doing annual goals, doing different parts of the IEP, and then getting into the accommodations or modifications a student needs in the classroom. We merged all of these together so that we start with the students' needs in the classroom and what supports are needed, what accommodations are needed within the classroom, and then addressing the state assessment. Many of us who have done a lot of IEP training will talk about you should be utilizing whatever accommodations and modifications are needed in the classroom for state testing. State testing shouldn't be the first time the students are accessing those supports. So in order to kind of drive that message home, we're first addressing the needs in the classroom and then going into state testing. So that's a bit of a shift for our current practices. Next slide. Also in the supports and services section, we get more into the supports, and we are breaking out consultative services, and in an effort to highlight the need for the team to consider an inclusive environment or a least restrictive environment. There is a separate box for the services that are provided in the general education classroom, really calling that out, that's a first consideration before the next row of boxes where you are considering any special education services outside of the general education classroom. The second page of this is really focusing on any anticipated transitions and making sure the team is intentional and setting the student up for success about any upcoming changes. Next slide. The parent involvement, we've moved into the body of the IEP. In most cases, it's on the signature page, and embedding it in the body of the IEP really gives the opportunity for the team to pause and make sure the parent has had an opportunity to be involved and feel involved in the IEP process. If they haven't, by the time you're getting to signature pages, it's a little bit late. This allows the team to pause and go back and address any areas where the parent hasn't felt like they've had the involvement. And then, of course, the emergency conditions, which are required through recent changes in our legislation. Next slide, please. And finally, we have the parent consent and the IEP team signatures and documentation that the procedural safeguards and any other notifications have been provided. And next slide. So you may be wondering where all of those fields many of us are familiar with on the front page of the IEP have landed. Our team developed an administrative data sheet, which is still a part of the IEP, but it's not the first thing that parents are presented with during the IEP. And this is really intended as a way to help reduce the technical nature of the IEP, is to streamline these fields and to not have it be the very first thing that families are facing during the meeting. So that is a walkthrough of the template. I'll turn it back over to Mindy.
All right, thank you. And if we can go to the next slide, please. So again, this is a quick presentation on a lot of information that happened over 2 years. So the report is hyperlinked. It is available. It's also on our CCE website. So please take a look at the process more in depth. The data collection is more in depth in that report, as well as the template itself is there as well. So we're going to go into some recommendations that our group is putting forward to the state for potential next steps. We have 9 of those. So Heather and I are going to go back and forth and go over those. And of course, leave time for questions as well. So if you can go to the next slide, please. The first recommendation is that CDE provide statewide guidance on the purpose and the goal of the template. Again, we really spent a lot of time, as you can see, almost 5 months focusing on what do we want the IEP to achieve. We know there's federal and state requirements, compliance requirements, but really collaborative process, student-centered, focusing on the student's assets, and that it's outcome driven. We're also asking that CDE provide guidance and post the template in multiple languages, which we have another recommendation for a little bit later on. Next slide, please. Next recommendation is to incorporate the IEP in a platform accessible for school teams and families. What this means is taking this template, right now it's a hard copy. A lot of our recommendations throughout the report and feedback that we received in the focus groups is take this IEP and put it into a software system, create a software system that already exists in the state of California, and really make it a dynamic, user-friendly document. So there's lots of drop downs that you can see in the template that on the hard copy, you can't see what those drop downs are. That would be when we implement it into a software program. Those drop downs would be available. And also, if you choose the age of the student, for instance, the part about high school post-secondary would not pop up as needed if you choose the student is 6 years old. So we're looking for a software that is dynamic based on user input, which really focuses on the needs of the student. Next slide, please.
Okay. Along those lines, we were also recommending that parents could have access to their child's IEP within any home to school communication systems that already exist. Parents can go in and check grades or progress reports, and if they could also get a copy of their IEP at any time, that would be helpful. The next recommendations were about training and implementation within the statewide system of support. So in addition to being a SELPA director in East County SELPA, we have received the Special Education Resource Lead for IEP Best Practices in partnership with Santa Clara County SELPA. So the High Quality IEP project has been called out as one of the recommendations to assist in the implementation of the statewide IEP template, to create family engagement strategies and supports to assist parents and families meaningfully participating in the IEP process, and then assist in the curation of evidence-based practices, resources, and training. And after we get through the slides, we will be able to preview some of that work and some of the recommendation that's already being implemented. Next slide, please. And as Mindy shared, we're looking for the IEP systems to work, but we'd also recommended that at least 2 LEAs that are identified by the department and CCEE would pilot this template. As we're going through, there are always refinements and a cycle of improvement that can be made. So we're really looking to have this in reality and what does this look like. So we're hopeful that there will be an opportunity to pilot and gather feedback and then make additional changes. Next slide, please.
All right, the other recommendation is, as we mentioned, the first one is that CDE translate the IEP template into multiple languages, at least at minimum consistent with the requirements of state and federal law, into all languages that the procedural safeguards are currently available in. And again, there's also a possibility in implementation for the software that could be done as well in the software program as a potential next step. Next recommendation, please. The other one currently right now, our State SELPA Administrators Association of California has a forms committee, and any changes in law or any recommendations by legislative act, they update those forms and send those out across the state to be chosen to be used by LEAs across the state. What we're recommending is that collaboration continue with CDE and the SELPA Administrators Association of California, and again, to update the template as required by legislative and or legal updates so that it's constantly being reviewed and constantly being updated based on legal requirements. Next slide, please.
And also with the recommendations for our high quality IEPs project is to develop additional resources to support teaching strategies. We recognize that there was a need to help support teachers as they are receiving students that are new to them and not having to start from scratch. So we wanted to be able to share teaching strategies that were successful in one environment with a new provider so that our students would have as smooth as transition as possible. So one of the recommendations is that our project develop additional resources to support teaching strategies and that articulation. And just as a side note, we do have a meeting with Nicole Tucker-Smith tomorrow from LessonCast, who's been doing a lot of the statewide UDL training on the 3.0 guidelines tomorrow to discuss some continued work in this area. Next slide, please. There was also a recommendation that in order to support the implementation and the usability, within our high quality IEPs project, we do have certain assurances, but part of those assurances do not include supporting the pilot. And so if that would be something that is asked of us, we would probably need some additional funding to be able to help support the template. Boy, that recommendation feels very self-serving. I apologize. Next slide, please.
I guess I should have taken that one, Heather. The last recommendation we have, again, is to continually review additional legal review. As we know, legislative and legal requirements change in special education. So just want to make sure that we're current with what the required federal and state law and legislative acts are requested of this, that it meets the needs of all the districts in California from a legislative and legal standpoint. And so this is the end of our 9 recommendations. I know that was really quick, but I also get the question a lot of, so what's after this? So know that all of these recommendations in the template, working with the state legislator and determining those next steps. So we're continuing to have those conversations and continuing to determine what that may look like with the legislator. So that was a lot of information. But we are open right now, Chair Tostin, to any questions that there may be regarding this work.
Andy and Heather, thank you so much. I just want to appreciate the energy and time and leadership from the California Collaborative to facilitate this process. When you shared there were 18 revisions, I think that is one indicator of the level of interest, importance, and the number of perspectives that needed to be reconciled to ensure that we arrived at a template that represented everyone's perspective and was certainly supportive of our students. Just want to highlight, I really appreciate the strength-centered approach in highlighting what our students can do as opposed to areas where we may need additional support, no matter how complex that support is, but really focusing on what we can accomplish together. So I wanted to pass that kudo on. I see a number of hands that are raised virtually. Vice Chair, actually you're virtual as well. And so I will start with those who are online, and then we will move to those who are in the room for comments, just while I get my bearings. So I have Commissioner Hamilton, Commissioner Michaud, and then Commissioner Ruiz.
Thank you. I really liked your presentation. I think that it's great that we're looking to improve the IEP process. And I think I see several things in this that I'm excited about. I like the IEP feeling less technical or leading with kind of the less technical aspect. And I also love that you lead with an inclusion first and foremost, almost as a default, like let's start here instead of this being an afterthought. And then I also really appreciate giving the pause for parents to give comment later in the process of the IEP discussion. I know that, we're often asked for our comments before the IEP even commences, and it's kind of overwhelming, and you think of so much more during the process, and we usually get, time to comment. But I like that you don't expect us to kind of throw everything out right at the beginning, but it's more part of the conversation. And then I love that there is the prospect for parents to be able to access the IEP more easily and whenever we want, because that's always a process to try to get a copy of the IEP. And particularly with kids with complex needs, we often need them for so many other services and other things like that. And my question is, do we have any kind of timeline for the rest of this process and, going through additional feedback and rolling it out more broadly?
No, that's a great question. Thank you for your feedback. Really appreciate that. And we really, with intentionality, try to focus from the parent perspective on this. So I'm glad that that came across. As far as next steps, again, we continue to work with the state legislator on what this can look like on the next steps and rollout. And that's an ongoing process that we're actively engaged in with our state agencies and the legislator. I'd like to also welcome Kristen. Sorry, Chris, if you want to come off mute, and welcome. She's a vital member of our panel that spent the last 2 years with us and is in the classroom doing this work on a day-to-day basis with kids. So Kristen, I just thank you for joining us.
Good morning. So sorry I'm late, but nice to meet you all, and thanks for having me.
Russell.
Good morning. Thank you so much for the presentation. Very exciting work. My question is around the vendors and the recommendation for vendors. Is a part of that recommendation that the state will streamline and have like one vendor that is statewide, or is it still, is that not a part of the recommendation right now?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you. The recommendation is still is broad, that we utilize any of the state vendors available in California to be able to turn it into a dynamic software program. So we didn't do any specifics on choosing one software program or limiting the number, because really the goal is to try and get this out and implemented in a way that's quick and efficient, but also has a process and builds upon what is already out there. So no direct recommendations for that.
And Mindy, I believe that the previous work group panel addressed that issue, and they found that it wasn't viable at this time for there to be one statewide system or for IEPs. The statewide system of support still lives.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ruiz.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I enjoyed last time. I'm on this journey with you guys, and I understand, what a big contribution it is to have this process streamlined and just, again, like Commissioner Hamilton said, really love how student focused and student strength based that it is. And that being said, I just because you guys have to make this perfect. I just want to keep building on how we can continue to make this easier for teachers as well. Like just keep building in supports and embedding processes that can make it, not so daunting, especially for gen ed teachers that get students with IEPs in their classroom, because I've seen it and I've heard it, and it's a big deal. And can I just lose my train of thought? I think that's mainly what I want to say. Again, I get that this whole thing is about the student, but since the teachers are such a huge component of this, I would just like it to be kind of win-win on both sides. But I really appreciate the work you're doing. Thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Reese, thank you for bringing that point up. We were very intentional to make this a useful document that teachers can then take and implement, strategies in their classrooms. And that's why we're working with the high quality IEP. One of the clear recommendations is a teacher strategy articulation form. How do we go from the IEP that's created to actually putting that in implementation and giving tools for teachers to really implement the goals and strategies for that? And Heather's group at the High Quality IEP, along with Santa Clara County or Santa Clara SELPA, have really already started on that journey. Go ahead, Heather.
And we had hoped to share our website this morning. I don't know if Denise can pull it up, and we can show some of the resources that we do have for educators already available that we are debuting right now. So I don't know if Denise...
At minimum, we can probably put that in the chat or have it available to you, but Commissioner Reese, we're with you. We're like, how can we make this a useful teacher implementation strategy document? And
thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely important.
And to just build on that, we do have on our website, we have it broken down by 3 different roles, but thinking of the IEP as a journey. So we have our parent or family role, our educator role, and our student role. So under each of those roles, we are building resources. Thank you, Denise. And then this is the educator role. If you scroll up a little bit, you can see the resources that we have. This is under a special education provider toolkit that we are just releasing today. And if you go down to a place to begin and you click on California Supports to All Students, the plus sign, and then you can see all of the different resources that we have even before a student is considered for special education. These, for example, if you clicked on California Support to All Students, these are resources. There you go. These are quick, easy visual reads to help our educators and our new entries into the field that are exiting higher ed and coming to us, to give them resources. And you'll see all the hyperlinks bring them to additional resources. If you go back to the tab you were just on, Denise, and then if you scroll down, in the interest of time, like staying organized. So helping teachers be efficient with their time. We have all these different tools to help teachers be organized in the IEP process. And perhaps if you click on the 60-day calendar, something happened there. Okay, so let's go back to that page that you were just on. And then you can see all of the different templates we have, contact logs, tools to help teachers remind families about the IEP, scheduling the IEP. So we have all of these different resources to help teachers. And then we have all of the sections of before the IEP, knowing that the template was just released in June, and that we are just celebrated our first year birthday. We do have a lot that's out there, so we really encourage everybody to keep checking back on our website.
Thanks, Heather.
Thanks.
So next question's from Commissioner Oyakawa, Snipes, then Topalian.
Good morning. Thank you so much. I just want to say thank you. This has been amazing to watch. I was excited when I first heard about your work, and it's great to see it happening. And hello to KU, Kristen over there, who I've met already, and she's an amazing teacher at my daughter's school in Davis at Da Vinci Charter. So I know you have some good input on your team. As a parent, I love the new graphics. I love the reduction of that first page with the demographics. It really just immediately makes everyone gloss over it and almost ignore the whole document, I think. And one of the things we talked about was how we want to be able to pass it on to the next team. And I think even just the graphics, the layout, everything, the intentional flow of how the meeting is now being driven is so much more natural. And I love that you've been able to, I think it was Commissioner Hamilton who said sort of the default, the assumptions are inclusion, the assumptions are diploma. And working in that direction is just so refreshing to see. I'm excited that you are working towards getting it implemented and available in multiple languages. That's so important in our state. And the accessibility online for families to be able to get on there and look through. I'm going to start browsing again through your website, not just on the parent section, but some of us parents creep into the teacher section to see what does it look like on their end so that we can also better understand the whole process. I have sisters and friends who are also teachers, so I'm going to be sending those links for the toolkits that you all have highlighted. So thank you so much. I think I just had a quick question. How do you, in the template itself, those little sections for entering in the information, it doesn't look like there's a lot of space. So is it as it's inputted that page gets longer and longer? Because I know we want brevity and clarity, but there's often for some of our more complex students with more complex disabilities or needs or wants have more information to input. And I'm just wondering just functionally how that happens. And then also, I'm sorry. Is there also a glance?
Sorry, we keep talking over each other. I'm so sorry. Just to answer that one real quick. It's when it's built into the software program, that's where the dynamic user interface would happen. And as well through Heather's group and high quality IEP, there's training that will go associated with that on, what does it look like to put in this box? So it's not just ends up being a 70-page document, but
right.
A full document.
So I love the flow. And then is there an at-a-glance page? There used to be like an at-a-glance version for some of the IEPs we've had where we saw like there was just like this mini condensed version that I know when we pass those on to the next team, that's often the only thing that the teachers would look at. And I wondered if there was something similar to that that's going to be part of the product.
We did not develop the form, but one of the recommendations was specific fields to be developed in that form. Most districts have some sort of form, but we were recommending specific fields. So there wasn't a need to recreate a whole form for that. But one of our recommendations did include specific fields for that IEP at a glance.
Or even, maybe the team could decide what needs to get pulled from the full document for that, to individualize for that student, what really needs to be highlighted. If that's something that's possible, I think that's been great. But what you've done is amazing. So thank you so much. I'm excited to see it rolling out.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and I think it's the next step on the software program and again, dynamic and user and really customized. So we're looking potentially as that a next step. Thank you, I appreciate your comments.
Commissioner Snipes.
Thank you for the presentation. I've been super excited for this for a while. I don't necessarily have a question, it's more appreciation for the process. Myself and Saran, another commissioner, were able to be part of one of the focus groups. And after participating in that and then seeing the template and the recommendations, it's just refreshing to go through a process and see your recommendations and suggestions reflected. And so I just really appreciate the connection across the statewide system of support, but also including groups like ours here on the commission and also student voice. Saran was a really important part of that focus conversation that we had, and some of her recommendations were reflected in what the product so far. So I just have to say the partnership across multiple agencies and stakeholders has been fantastic, and I'm really excited to see and be a part of the rollout of this. So thank you.
Thanks, Heather, and thank you again for your participation. Your comments were really influential, and I'm glad that you see those reflected. Thank you.
Commissioner DePaul.
Thank you. And again, thank you. I just want to echo everybody's appreciation. I was on the first round. I think it's been 4 or 5 years. It took a long time. But I do want to say that I think just having planning backwards is always important about where we want the student to be, and then working our way back. And those are a lot of good conversations, but also having that consistency from one district to another. And being in education for about 25 years, I think we don't lose time looking for paperwork, and people were to adopt, and also in training for teachers or staff members, so they're able to they don't have to learn something new. They don't have to figure out where it is. Is it number page 4? Is it in page 5? Is it where it is? But I think it's just the consistency makes a big difference, and having that mindset and shifting and thinking about the student first makes a big difference. But I want to also make a comment for Commissioner Ruiz, where she mentioned about the teachers. That was a conversation the first time around where we discussed a lot about like the teacher training and how much training they would need instead of just rolling it out in that sense. So I know that was important, and having all these websites and tools is great. So thank you again for all your hard work and your time, and having us be part of this.
Great, thank you. I appreciate the comments. It's been a labor of love. It truly has, for all of us on the panel, and we were actually kind of sad that this project ended, because the camaraderie and the sharing of resources across all the panel members was an extra added benefit. So I don't know, KU, if you wanted to say any comments, or Vicki, since you're a panel member as well, if that's okay, Chair Todd.
Oh, absolutely.
Sure. I just wanted to add, I appreciate the comments and thinking about teachers too, because I think as we look at this form, especially when it's blank, it looks quite long, and it's always a balance, right, of how do we be thorough, but also really think about what's practical. And one of the things I love about the template is more than the current forms, I think it can be a framework for facilitating the meeting, and not just a way to capture what's at the end of the meeting. And so when I work with new teachers, for instance, like that's something that I have to kind of do on the side or talk about in this form. You can kind of go through the process from start to finish, and it tells a story, and it prompts different perspectives throughout the process. And I think that will be really useful for teachers, even if it does look a little lengthy to begin with. And then it's only going to be lengthy if certain things are needed, right? So for our students with more complex support needs, it might be lengthy, but for other students, they might not need all of those fields. And it's just been such a pleasure to get to participate in the panel and see this final product come to fruition, because student voice inside the IEP is such an important component, and something that often gets thought of last, or how can we make it happen while still doing all the compliance things. And I think that this process really allows for students and families to come and be part of a really important role in the meeting and in the process, while also meeting the needs of what an IEP is meant to do. So I just thank you all for all your feedback, and Mindy and Heather for your leadership. It's been a really great process.
Yeah, I'd just like to second that. I want to thank Mindy and Heather for their great work, and the whole work group. And I was privileged enough to be on the first one as well. So it's been a lengthy process, but really a very rewarding one to see everyone come together, to support students and families and everyone involved in the whole process. And I believe that Heather is hoping to present the new template at the California Council on Teacher Education, which is all the universities in California who prepare teachers, both general education and special educators, so that we can get it out into the universities. And of course, it should go out to the universities that prepare school principals, psychologists, counselors. Everyone needs to benefit from this work as well. So again, thanks to Mindy and Heather for the great work, and the commission and everyone who served in terms of feedback for it. Everyone really was listened to in terms of what their concerns were or recommendations. So thanks again, and thank you.
Well, as we begin to transition away, I'm reflecting on the comments shared with us from Beth Forker yesterday, because most of the time things that are worthy of doing are either massively inconvenient, exhausting, or terrifying. Does this mean you shouldn't do it? Absolutely not. Step out of our current reality and take another step. Believe, expand, and ride out those chances while we still can. And that pops into mind because this is a massive undertaking and a significant systems change. And I just wanted to close with the appreciation of the thoughtfulness in terms of rollout. It takes for a system to change, even a local school district to roll out one change to the IEP form. It takes months of planning and training and capacity building to ensure that it's done with integrity. So I just want to appreciate the rollout of the IEP template, and in the context of many of the other changes and transformations that are happening in our state. I think of community schools, the presentation we had on dual enrollment, the post-secondary opportunities for students with disabilities, how we will continue to move forward over 5 years and 10 years from where we're starting today. And so really excited about what we can do. And I would leverage commissioners as we are sharing information with our liaisons to uplift the template, because this will generate conversations locally. And I'm really emphasizing that we are at the beginning of the start of this journey, and supporting all of those agencies that will be part of implementation and iterations 18 through 35 before it's said and done. Mindy, Heather, and Kristen, thank you so much for your time and efforts. We will love to stay abreast of how this progresses, so please feel free to give us updates as it rolls out. With that, I'll transition into public comment. If there are any members of the public in the physical location at the Department of Education, we'd ask that you please begin lining up. And Denise, if you could share the slide. Thank you. With instructions for any other individuals wishing to make public comment. We will just pause for those comments to begin coming in.
There are no public comments in the room at this time.
Thank you. Are there any online public comments?
Caller ending in 8614. If comfortable, please state your name and affiliation and begin public comment. Speaker, you will have exactly 1 minute. Your time begins now.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Veronica Coates, Vice Chair of the Self-Administrators of California. We would like to thank the work group for including members of our association as experts and practitioners in the field in their work group. We really appreciate some of the commissioners' comments on the implementation impacts and think they are critical. From a practitioner and legal perspective, we continue to have questions and concerns, specifically around the impacts of implementation in a state as vast as ours with a very taxed workforce. We fully support the recommendations to further investigate implementation with pilots and funding, and look forward to working with the High Qualities IEP project, especially as the stewards and hosts of the State Forms Committee. Thank you to the work group for the intentionality in this process and the continued work on this great systems change.
Thank you. There are no callers at this time.
Thank you. So I will close public comments on this item. And Mindy, I would just ask if there are any LEAs that volunteer for the pilot, if you could just let us know so that we can obviously track on their progress and support them, and hopefully invite them to ACSE at some point to share their journey and experience around implementation.
Sure will. I'll keep you updated on any progress that we have on next steps with the state legislator as well.
All right. Thank you, Mindy. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Kristen. With that, we will close item 8 and transition into item 9, ACSE Recognition Award Planning. This has been a process, and I just want to acknowledge, Russell, thank you so much for your leadership. I believe there were others involved, but as memory in the moment, I just remember lots of emails coming across from Russell and coordinating with our partners on this. And so, Russell, I will turn it over to you to share an update with us.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, everybody. Good morning. There is a document that is in the virtual binder if you would like to follow along. I'm going to be walking through an overview and proposal that Co-Chair Hamilton and the Self-Administrators of California and I have been putting together over the last handful of weeks. And so if you would like to follow along, that is where we are going to be looking. So for context, we discussed at our last meeting that the initial award given by the Grazer family was expended during the 23-24 award season. And so with this, or because of this, we've been exploring other options for continuing the award under a new name and with new sponsorship. We got some suggestions for names at the last meeting and have been meeting with the Self-Administrators of California, who have graciously agreed to continue and expand, in fact, their support of the award. And so we've partnered with them to rethink the scope beginning in this upcoming 24-25 school year. So an overview of what we are proposing today, and this will be something that we are voting on, is that we would rename the award, the Goal Award, to be the ACSE Impact Award in partnership with the Self-Administrators of California. And we would look to recognize exceptional programs across California with a focus on demonstrating equitable and inclusive practices. In addition to that focus on equitable and inclusive practices, we would redesign the rubric to be aligned with ACSE's other priority areas. In addition to what has been done for the award winner in the past, which is the actual monetary award, the presentation, the lunch, and the plaque, we would also like to make an addition to this award and create a video of the winning program that would be able to be shared in various websites, the ACSE website, Self-Administrators of California, and then would also want to do a CDE press release so that we can just get more of this information out to the field. Some of the logistics around the financials is that the Self-Administrators of California is a partner in the work, and they've agreed to financially support the award with a minimum of $5,000, possibly more pending association vote, and then the celebrations that are associated with the award. And so that's the luncheon, the video, and the plaque. In addition to that support, they're going to have members, or we would like to propose that they have members who are part of the scoring committee so that they can partner with us not just on the financial component, but also in scoring the various applications that come in. They would not be able to participate in the final voting that we do on the dais, but would be able to participate in the scoring. Some proposed next steps, we would like to, or we're proposing that we would rename the Goal Award Committee to the ACSE Impact Award Committee. And then for today, we would love to receive feedback from ACSE on the proposal that I just walked through, and then vote to confirm this overview and next steps. What would happen between now and October is that the committee would create supporting resources for the award, like the application and the aligned scoring rubric, and then bring those to the October meeting for feedback on those supporting resources. Would then vote to confirm those resources and then send out the application to CDE and Self-Administrators of California to share with the field immediately following the October meeting. And then the tentative timeline, which is written in the overview document, we would have applications due at the end of January 2025, have a January 31st through February 7th scoring window, get the scores to the award committee on February 10th, and then final deliberation and vote on the award winner at our February ACSE meeting. And then the award winner would be invited to join in person, and we would give them two options, either the April meeting or the June meeting, to ensure that they had the flexibility to be able to come up and join us in person in Sacramento. A lot of information. It is all captured in the document that's in the virtual folder, but would love to open the floor for discussion, questions, etc.
May I add just one thing?
Yeah, Commissioner Hamilton.
Thank you, Russ, for your great leadership on all of this. I also wanted to add, as you can tell, the SELPA administrators, we have a much more robust partnership with them than we had previously. And in addition to all the elements that Russ described, I am also very excited about their ability and capability to partner with us on expanding our reach and awareness for these programs, these exceptional programs, and the award winners specifically, just by their base of distribution to their audiences and more of their resources around that. So I think that's really cool as well, since that's such a goal for us to be able to really share these programs broadly.
Thank you. Commissioner Oyakawa.
Thank you, Russ. This is amazing. I'm so excited. I'm so glad you and Don are running the show. And if they're listening, thank you to Scott and all our SELPA friends, SELPA administrators friends, for their support and partnership on this program. Great title. I like the new name. I think Don might have just answered it. As far as like the resources needed for creating the video, putting it on the website, because those are ideas that we all wanted and love, and didn't want to have Denise running around doing everything. So I was wondering if that's something that SELPA was sharing with those aspects. If the association is going to be doing that, or how do we anticipate those things will be rolled out and followed up on?
Yeah, great question. So the current thinking is that the SELPA administrators of California would financially support the video being created, and then there would be sort of a partnership of the SELPA administrators of California and the I almost called it the Goal Award Committee, the ACSE Impact Award Committee, in supporting with the logistics. And so making sure that we have a video crew sent down or up to whatever program it is, but the financial support for that video would come from the SELPA administrators of California.
Great, thank you so much.
Commissioner Ding.
Thank you so much for the update. I also really like the new name of emphasizing impact and also putting ACSE kind of at the forefront and highlighting that it is really surrounding special education programs. I remember in the overview, it mentioned that the rubric will be redesigned to be aligned with other priority areas that we have. I was wondering, would this new rubric be workshopped through the award committee, or what would be the process for that?
Yeah, so the plan would be that that resource would be sort of created and drafted between now and the October meeting, and then similar to what we're doing today, that those resources would be included in the virtual folder for folks to review ahead of the meeting, and then we'd have a discussion to get feedback and finalize those resources.
Wonderful. I can't wait to kind of see the language as well as the new areas that we come up with. Yeah, very excited. Thank you.
And to add to the to add some additional information, the priority areas that we'll begin working from are the priority areas from our strategic plan: emotional and behavioral health, student and family voice, equity, inclusion, and literacy. Those four primary areas. So not restricting it to that, but aligning the applications to uplift how the potential awardees are making impact in one of those areas would absolutely impact the scoring and how we prioritize a number of programs that are worthy of recognition. And what I appreciate about the revised timeline, as we make our decisions earlier, that allows us more time to create a more robust profile of the selected awardees for our annual report, because we will know who they are in April, and kind of have our schedule set so we can use that as a communication channel as well. So I want to solicit any other comments, questions, need for clarification. All right, is there anyone interested in making a motion to adopt the overview and proposal for the 2024? And actually, before I go there, it's for 2024-25. And I'm not sure, did we have a conversation with the SELPA administrators about how long we want to keep this commitment in place? I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but my assumption is we're not going year to year. And so this is probably a more multi-year agreement, not knowing what that number is. But if we're going to adopt it, maybe we should just adopt the overview and proposal for the ACSE Impact Award, as opposed to limiting it to just 24-25.
Yes. So the idea is that this would be a longer-term partnership. We did not discuss a specific number, but I like that correction of removing the timeline, or not the timeline, but the years from the overview.
Okay. So with that, is there anyone wishing to make a motion to adopt and approve, or approve and adopt the proposal to rename or to establish the ACSE Impact Award? See, Commissioner Reese has her hand raised. So you're willing to make the motion?
I'd like to make a motion, yes.
Is there a second? I see a second from Commissioner Topalian.
I will second that we adopt this new process for the impact, the previously AKA Goal Award. There you go.
I think the most challenging aspect for many of us will be not calling it the Gold Award anymore. Before we move to the roll call vote, is there any additional discussion? Denise, would you facilitate the roll call vote?
Yes. Chair Tostin?
Yes.
Vice Chair Groff?
Yes.
Commissioner Estes? Commissioner Hamilton?
Yes.
Commissioner Liu?
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez? Commissioner Michaud?
Yes.
Commissioner Notch?
Yes.
Commissioner Oyakawa?
Yes.
Commissioner Ruiz?
Yes.
Commissioner Snipes?
Yes.
Commissioner Sorter?
Yes.
Commissioner Topalian?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Ding?
Yes.
Commissioner Tux-Jargle? That concludes.
All right, the motion passes. Thank you, Russ, Don, and everyone else who contributed. And I just want to really appreciate our partners from the State SELPA Association for their willingness to partner, engage in the conversation, and being a partner who we know, as many of our partners, we have alignment in terms of our vision to uplift programs that make impact and to be a part of that impact and transformation as well. Some of our next steps that are outlined, obviously, in the proposal, but we'll be working with the CDE team to update the little blurb that's on the ACSE website, and continue to develop plans for our outreach once we have the application and resources adopted at our next meeting. And while we have this program in place, just again, make a commercial for any of our other statewide partners who would like to partner with ACSE and acknowledge programs for impact. We certainly would not be opposed to engaging in those conversations, because we know there are no shortage of worthy programs to uplift, and or promising practices or leaders and individuals. And so just wanted to continue to express that open invitation for additional partnerships with ACSE to support our shared vision. Commissioner Notch?
Thank you, and I'm glad you mentioned that because at the most recent SECO meeting, I know there was a discussion about also wanting to...
And SECO stands for?
Sorry, Special Education Administrators of County Offices. Thank you. There was a discussion about we have an ability to also contribute financially, however that would help or what it would look like. I was so excited to see how robust the partnership with SELPA is. So however SECO could help Special Education Administrators of County Offices, there is a desire to partner as well.
Absolutely. So Commissioner Notch, I'll follow up with you and Russ offline, and we will figure out a strategy to move that conversation forward. All right. With that, I want to pause for public comment. If there are any members of the public in the room wishing to make public comment, we ask that you begin lining up now. Denise, if you could please display the slide. Any members of the public who are wishing to make public comment on this item, we ask that you would dial in. And if there is there may be a call from our partners in the SELPA Association, as they weren't part of the presentation. So if they call in, I would extend the 1 minute timeline for our partners just so that they can voice any thoughts since they weren't a part of our conversation or in the room with us. This might be a good time for me to apologize in advance if that violates Bagley-Keene or Robert's Rule of Order. This one's on me. I'm kind of making this up as I go. So just full transparency.
There are no public commentators in the room at this time.
Thank you. We'll hold for the online callers.
Caller ending in 7000. If comfortable, please state your name and affiliation and begin public comment. Speaker, you'll have exactly 1 minute. Your time begins now.
Good morning. This is Scott Turner, Chair of SELPA Administrators of California. Just want to thank the commissioners this morning for the discussion and the continued focus on trying to spotlight practices across our state. Our association is very interested in this partnership. Also heard the comments from our colleagues at SECO and would extend any possibilities of partnering with them on this award or any other visions that ACSE has for spotlighting practices similar to this. Very supportive of this, and we will have a meeting for our non-profit organization within the next month, and we'll be able to work out further details and bring them back to ACSE before your next meeting to confirm any further details. So very excited about the ACSE Impact Award and look forward to working with ACSE and potentially SECO in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
There are no callers at this time.
Thank you. And before we wrap up this item, I just want to emphasize for clarity, this partnership is with the SELPA Administrators Association. It's a nonprofit organization and not any individual SELPA that's charged with obviously their various responsibilities in law. And so just, and I didn't emphasize that with commissioners as we are talking about this partnership to be explicit in that it is with the nonprofit association of SELPA administrators. All right, with that, we are a bit ahead on our time by about 45 minutes. I want to honor the agenda as much as possible because I know there are members of the public who may want to hear the various reports from the state board and the special ed director. So I don't want to advance our agenda too much forward. So why don't we there's no way around it. Why don't we take a break until 10:35, and we will resume at 10:35 and pick up the agenda from there. Thank you all. Thank you, everyone. Welcome back. We'll be moving into item 10, reports from commissioners, the state board, and just a quick agenda adjustment. We will not have a report from the director of the state special schools today. And so why don't we begin with the update. I'll just verify board member Yoshimito Tori is online.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. We'll start with you and then we'll move into commissioner updates.
Okay, excellent. It's nice to see everyone again today. And as you know, the State Board of Education annually reviews our California school dashboard indicators and performance standards to consider whether changes need to be made or there need to be improvements. And we base these updates often on whether there's newly available data, or there's improved research or feedback from educational partners. So at our July state board meeting, the board did take action on the 2024 dashboard, including adding a science metric based on the science assessment data, and to add that to the dashboard. We also addressed transitional kindergarten and long-term English learner students on the dashboard, and the incorporation of new requirements in differentiated assistance eligibility criteria, which is really the criteria that determines which districts are eligible for support, for technical assistance support. And so I just wanted to give 3 examples about the dashboard that are a little bit more specific. And one is the state decided to adopt a distance from standard unit measurement for the science indicator, one that's consistent with the way that we measure English language arts and math. And it also, distance from standard, the way it's calculated is tracks all students' progress on a continuum, as opposed to we had a robust conversation, but as opposed to just calculating percent of students who meet or exceed a standard, which really focuses on a percentage of students that hit that threshold. And so by deciding to use distance from standard, it better allows us to understand where all students are and how to support and make improvement based on all students. The board also determined that there should be a 95% participation rate to factor into the science indicator, but that we were going to ask the Department of Education to not enact that penalty until the 2025 dashboard. So it gives districts a little bit longer runway to be able to meet that percentage of participation. And we also had a review of our long-term English learner population that's now being added to the dashboard. And I think that's significant, particularly for ACSE, as you know, that many students are dually identified as both long-term English learners and students with disabilities. And I believe it was in the last meeting that our Imperial County SELPA colleagues presented with all the resources that they've produced in the MUSE, the MUSE grant that the state's provided for our dually identified students. And then separate from the dashboard, we talked about interim guidance for the state for transitional kindergarten students who, in taking the English language proficiency assessment called the LPAC. There was an Assembly Bill 2268 passed in June, which removed that requirement for TK students to take the LPAC. And therefore, the board provided feedback on the original guidance or the interim guidance that the department's sending out to schools, particularly around not designating TK students as TBD, or if we do designate them as TBD, that we encourage LEAs to choose other developmentally appropriate tools that are out there already in use to inform and support instruction. And also, really, the board expressed the need to provide a clear definition of TBD status that emphasize the importance of focusing on dual language acquisition rather than solely English proficiency. And also, the board looks forward to developing long-term solutions that both align with federal and state requirements, but also enhance timely service to English learner students. And then the other action we took is that I wanted to highlight was that we ratified CDE's application for a competitive grants for state assessments program. And notably, because the last time we applied for that grant, that federal grant in 2019, the state received $37 million in federal funding that we used to support numerous literacy efforts. And so again, we continue to seek resources that support the important work of helping our students improve literacy in our great state. And then finally, I wanted to highlight on day 2, we had a study session at the board in the July meeting, and it focused really on the transformative impact of, we had an opportunity to reflect on the transformative impact of our local control funding formula over the last decade, which really has been an era of more equitable funding, local control, a holistic vision of student success, as well as robust community engagement and decision-making. And we've coined this the California way. And our goal with the study session was really to begin the vision to explore the priorities for the next 10 years and to build on the foundation that we've set in the previous 10. And so we were inspired by a panel of superintendents from Anaheim, Compton, and Lindsay Unified, who shared their district's innovative approaches to education. And we also engaged in a meaningful conversation with other state board leaders across the nation, including New York and Kentucky, to engage ideas around future student growth. And I wanted to highlight just 4 of the ideas that came out. One was really emerging this idea of a portrait of a learner, or what would be a North Star for students as we want our learners to embody and what we want them to know and be able to do as they complete their K-12 experience or TK-12 experience. And so there's interest in exploring what that would look like at the state level. And that goes beyond GPA and beyond grades. It's really, what kind of young people, what kind of skills do we want them to have, and life skills as well. And there are lots of discussion about assessments, and specifically looking at performance-based assessments to ensure that students have authentic opportunities to demonstrate what they know. And other states have taken steps to remove barriers to standard diplomas for students with disabilities, which really mirrors the work that's already happening in California, as you saw yesterday in some of our presentations. And then finally, there was a robust discussion about the importance of career and technical education and looking at ways to provide flexibility and to incentivize innovation at the local level through business and community partnerships. That would be internships or dual enrollment opportunities, or it could be career industry certifications, and also integrating experience that are more experience-based rather than only seat-based to prepare students for tomorrow's opportunities. So those are just a few highlights. And again, thank you for the opportunity to always share what's happening at the State Board. Thank you.
Thank you for the update, and just really appreciate the board's focus and envisioning. Remembering back to when LCFF was adopted, there was lots of angst around what it would lead to and what it would mean, and some of the progress that we have made towards more equitable education, the conversations that it has opened up, I'm not sure would be possible under the old categorical funding formula. I just really want to appreciate the leadership of the board and the continued investment in transformative efforts, and the districts that you reference. I know Anaheim and Compton in particular have done phenomenal work in different areas for their student population. Specifically, Anaheim's focus on community engagement and their portrait of graduate and the turnaround that's happened in Compton over a number of years with their student population, and explicitly calling out the needs of our students with disabilities is it's inspiring and energizing for the work that we'll be doing as a commission to make sure that we're in line with the California way.
Thank you so much.
Any questions or comments? Commissioner Graff and Commissioner Ding.
Thank you so much for the presentation, as always. I was just curious, has the State Board had a presentation by Mindy on the new IEP template, or if they haven't, will there be a presentation to the State Board about the work that we just heard earlier today?
We do have a liaison on that committee, and so we do get regular updates through the board member liaison reports. But I could certainly check on a full presentation and express that interest.
Commissioner Ding.
Thank you for the presentation, Allison. And I just wanted to second two of the points that you made when it came to comments from other State Board leaders. One was the idea of a portrait of a learner. I really liked how you emphasize not just maybe academic goals that can be clarified and act as goals or milestones that students can look forward to, but also more social, emotional, behavioral aspects. I think just from a student perspective, that has been so important, especially with my year and the years above me and below me. We were so impacted by the pandemic and that whole transition from in-person to online and then back again. I think the other aspects of becoming an adult and being ready for whatever post-secondary means for each student is so important, and kind of outlining in clearer words, what are some of the milestones that each student should be reaching for or improving about themselves or working towards. That's not just perhaps GPA or classes or academic work. That was one of the aspects that I really liked, how it was more of the holistic focus. And then the second one, kind of adding on to it, is the career and technical education. I remember in our district, there were lots of emphasis of doing classes and activities that were directly applicable to what students wanted to do in the future. So that included home ed classes and more hands-on technical classes. And I think that's such a great focus for a lot of students who might want their courses, what they learn in courses, to directly apply to what they are doing outside of courses or what they want to do in the future. Yeah.
Thank you for those comments, Rachel. And just on behalf of the State Board, it's been very inspiring to have both you and Saran on the ACSE this year. And so I just wanted to congratulate you as you take your next steps and say how proud we are of you. And thank you for bringing the student voice into this space for those of us who get daily inspired to hear students, and your opinions really matter in the shaping of future decisions that the state makes. So thank you.
Thank you.
Allison, thank you so much. I don't see any additional comments, so we will move on to commissioner reports. This is an opportunity for commissioners to share any activities that you've engaged in your role as commissioner and provide any updates. I see Commissioner Hamilton has her hand up.
Thank you. I have a message from our CCSA, California Charter Schools Association Liaison, Gina Plate. Gina reports that charter schools excitedly opening up around the state and getting involved in some of the initiatives rolling out. Some of the charters are eager to begin the work with the new cohort of schools in the Community Engagement Initiative at CCEE. And some others are excited to get acceptance into cohort 2 for the Child and Youth Behavioral Health Initiative, which is a great reminder for LEAs that have not turned in their LEA baseline survey to ensure you are eligible for the capacity grant funding. The deadline is August 22nd, so coming up next week. And as a reminder, the Children and Youth Behavioral Health Initiative is a 5-year $4.6 billion initiative aimed at transforming and improving mental health and substance use support for children, youth, and families across the state. So very important work. She says, reach out to CCSA and they can forward the link to the survey in order for you to get that to complete and ensure your options are open. She also mentioned that charter schools are also cognizant of the new renewal criteria being rolled out, and many appreciate the partnership with their authorizers in this new landscape. And while funding is tight, there are many reasons to get excited.
Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. Commissioner Ruiz.
Thank you. As the FEC, Family Empowerment Center liaison, on behalf of myself and Dr. April Lopez, I'd just like to thank Liz Spencer, the director of Westside, and Paula Prado, director of Parenting Network, and of course, Seeds of Partnership, for their support and coordination in serving and collaborating with us as the FEC liaisons this year. We learn a lot from these connections and have that touch point with the parent centers. I know that we are going to continue to do this into the 24-25 school year, and new liaisons will be identified in the upcoming month. So I'm looking forward to that and working with some new liaisons. We're excited. As of July, the two parent centers that are the most recent to be awarded the FEC grant are Parents Can, which serves Napa County, and Matrix Parents at Marin Center for Independent Living, which serves Marin and Solano counties. And Sonoma, we're looking forward to collaborating with them and all the centers across the state. If there's ever any questions about how you would like to partner with us, you can always reach out to me, or also Noelia Hernandez is the CDE FEC contact. And we also will be meeting in person next week to have our yearly get together and discuss all the current goings on in the next steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ruiz. Any other updates from commissioners? No, I just share, I participated in the San Bernardino County Wellness Conference over the summer, and there was a work session, and I can't remember what the acronym stands for, T2. It's centered around mental health, collaborating with public agencies, and the work group spent a lot of time talking about practices, identifying where pain points are, and plotting strategies forward to continue making progress on the integration of mental health supports in K-12 settings. I also participated in the California Statewide Family Engagement Center initiative. This is different than the FECs. This is federal funding, and the intent of this, and I'm a member of their advisory committee. The group, the purpose of this group is to increase awareness and resources to deepen family engagement across schools in California. And so outside of our special ed realm, where we have our CACs and the FACs that are oriented to students with disabilities, this is a universal, broad focus to promote awareness of the benefits of family engagement, as well as the need to ensure that our parent voices are part of the vision setting and strategies that districts are implementing through their LCAP. And so how we can ensure families understand are receiving the invitation, and LEAs are developing their capacity to be effective in their outreach and engagement of families beyond, please come to a meeting, listen to our plans, and sign a form. And so really developing authentic partnerships. And next week, I'll be connecting with the FECs, as Commissioner Ruiz just highlighted, to share an update of our work and extend our continued appreciation for their work, and how we are looking forward to continuing to partnering with the FECs and supporting their work going forward. So With that, I don't see any other commissioners with information to report, so I will close item 10, and we will move into item 11, the Special Ed Director's Report. Shiloh, thank you so much for being with us today. We yield the space to you.
Thank you so much, Chair Tostin. I really appreciate it. I am here for Director Heenan. My name is Shiloh Duncan Bessariel. I am the Associate Director for Special Education over data monitoring and the system of support for special education. And so I'll be presenting some of the work that we have been focused on while Director Heenan enjoys a much needed vacation. And so I kind of want to start off with some of the larger picture issues we've been dealing with. First of all, the budget bill and trailer bills, the legislature and the governor reach an agreement on the budget, and they've been signed and chaptered by the Secretary of State. If you are so inclined to read them, or if that's something that's just you, or you really need a way to fall asleep, the bills are SB 153, SB 108, or SB 107. So you're welcome to peruse those I think more than 300 pages of budget bills, and see sort of how the state comes together with its full budget. Some things I would like to highlight for you are some things that were identified in the budget this year. One is the Inclusive College Center. As you all heard yesterday, to I think a wonderful presentation about sort of the benefits and the impacts of an inclusive college education has been on the students that presented. The intent is for us to identify a center that will help expand that. So the budget bill identified $2 million from the general fund, not IDEA funds. There are some restrictions in that space. So to fund a California Center for Inclusive College, which will be administered by a county office of education in partnership with a regional center, a public post-secondary institution, and the UC Davis Mind Institute, which I think is part of the work that we saw yesterday. And it is a big lift with several requirements to establish a statewide support and coordination regarding programs and services for students with intellectual disabilities. But the intent of the center is to increase access to meaningful post-secondary education credentials and work experience to afford students with intellectual disabilities inclusive and meaningful campus experiences. So much like the experiences of our two students yesterday, really replicating and expanding that across the state. We are reviewing the final bill language and trying to understand the impact. We will be releasing an RFA for this initiative this fall. And so we would invite county offices to apply to be this center throughout the state. And so that will be coming, I think, shortly, probably within the next couple months. We will see that come out. In addition to that, we did have some updates to our alternative diploma pathway. In fact, the trailer bill and the budget bill eliminated the word alternative diploma pathway. So again, yesterday I was talking about two things that are similar, that sound similar and called similar. That also is kind of a little bit more complicated, but now this carve out that we have in the federal requirement that allows us to kind of change some of the requirements for a certain set of students to receive a diploma. We are no longer calling the alternative diploma pathway; it's just referred to as the diploma or a diploma of graduation, and this. In addition to that, it updated the Ed Code, specifically 51225.32. I'm reading that, so I did not memorize it, which really grandfathers in students who were enrolled in grade 10 or higher in the 22-23 school year. So if they were enrolled in grade 10 or higher, then they could be eligible for receiving a diploma under this statute. They still have to meet the same requirements as before. They had to have been eligible for the alternate diploma and meet the requirements set forth for this diploma. And then one of the other things that I kind of wanted to highlight today was in terms of the budgets and that work that's happening is our Inclusive Early Education Expansion Program that had a lot of changes in terms of there was a lot of drama with this funding this year. We had a lot of work associated, but this is to really support the extensive need for California state preschool programs to receive support for inclusion, including ongoing professional development, facility modification, adaptive equipment, implementation of resources to support children with disabilities, and the support for the Universal Design for Learning. Our data shows that there's still a significant number of programs that will need support in order to even meet the 5% set aside for students or children with disabilities. And so we were really thankful of the restoration of the funding associated with the Inclusive Early Education Expansion Program of $100 million to support inclusion in subsidized early education learning for children ages 0 through 5. I think it's really important that the advocacy should be recognized in this effort. If you remember the initial bill, the initial budget proposal was a cut to this funding. And really through the advocacy and the work from the public, the educators, the parents, everyone really pushed to put this funding back in. And I didn't do any of the work, but the legislature was able to find a way to put it back in. So I think that's very exciting for us. However, we still need to continue the ongoing advocacy and spotlight sort of rightful place for children in early education for children with disabilities. In high quality California state preschool program, we typically lag behind the nation in terms of inclusion for preschool, with only 20% of students with disabilities in fully inclusive programs, while the nation averages around 41%, and that's for our children ages 3 to 5. And this really underscores the efforts that we need to work on to integrate preschool. Because, as you know, early education for children with disabilities is often an on-ramp to inclusive education at the elementary school level, and is often creates better successes for the long term. There are also a few bills that I just wanted to highlight for you all that we are watching. There is SB 445, which is the translation bill. We submitted a cost analysis associated with this bill, which estimates the cost for districts to be in the tens of thousands and up to hundreds of thousands of dollars for very large districts. So as of last week, this bill was put in suspense, but we are still watching it to see if things change in that space. In addition to that, I would also highlight for you all SB 939, which is the early education equity for non-divergent pupils. The bill adds the category of neurodivergent to a list of categories in which CDE will make available resources to help students and families if they have been subjected to school-based discrimination. We have advocated that the term neurodivergent just simply be changed to all students with disabilities, because we believe all students and families should be able to access, or students with disabilities and their families be able to access additional resources if they have been subjected to school-based discrimination. And so those, while we wouldn't administer those resources, they would be available through our whole child division if the bill were to pass in any form. And then the last thing I wanted to update you all on was more of an internal happening in the division is around workability. So we are making a change to our 24-25 workability grants, as we are unable to distribute any workability grant funds to non-public schools. In the past, we had distributed non-public funds for workability directly to non-public schools. We are no longer able to do that. So we informed the field, non-public schools and special education local plan areas of this change on June 4th. And so it's really about constitutional restrictions with the funding source for workability. And so we will be publishing an RFA for some of the funds. It's about $1 million is going to be redistributed back out to county offices and districts. So students in non-public schools are still able to have access to workability, but it needs to be through their county offices and their LEAs and not directly to the non-public schools. So it's really about right-sizing that piece. And so we will be redirecting about $1.5 million that normally went directly to non-public schools through an RFA. And county offices and districts who are currently receiving funds can also apply for that if they need it. So this isn't, I think one of the things that we really want to make clear is this is not changing the availability of workability for children in non-public schools, but it is really about how the funding flows. So that's all I had to update at this time. We're excited to see school start, and obviously, they are heading into a significant potential fire season, and so that also sometimes disrupts things that are happening in school districts. And so we will be working with school districts regularly who are identifying as having disruptions in the provision of services for children and students with disabilities, and we will keep you all posted. And we also intend to be, or at least myself and Director Heenan will be back in front of you all in October to talk more about our annual performance report. So we are excited about that. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Shiloh. I really appreciate all of the details. And for me, what really stood out was the data around preschool inclusion and where California lags, which I think is not the place that we want to be, and recognizing our complex early childhood preschool systems and the great amount of efforts that have already been taking place, but glad to hear that it is a recognized area of priority going forward. And commissioners, this is something we may want to think about in terms of how we learn more and fulfill our role and advisement as the work continues and becomes more sharpened. I see Commissioner Oyakawa with a comment.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Shava. There's some good news, especially on the preschool front, or starting to get to be good news. I think I wanted to continue on the question about from yesterday when we put you on the spot, because I'm still confused, I think, on the alternative, or what was called the alternative diploma pathway. So I guess I'd like to understand how, what we are calling it now, as far as these are students that qualify through the alternative assessment. And I know their diploma is going to just be called a diploma, but as far as having conversations with families in schools about that path that those students are taking, as opposed to the discussion we had yesterday about other alternative coursework options for other students with disabilities who don't qualify for the alternative assessment. I guess I did have a question about what terminology we should be using, just to make sure we're all consistent and clear. And then I guess the second part of that question I didn't ask yesterday was seeing the great work that was being done by WestEd on the second group that doesn't qualify for the alternative assessment. I guess my question is, I forgot to ask, what is the timeline for when we expect the guidance to be issued? I think originally it was supposed to be June of this year, and what we anticipate going forward for next year. I know that the work group is still continuing, I think, through January. And if we had a timeline for when we expected that information to get put out to the families and districts. Thank you.
So so those are a two-part question. So let me address the first part. So this is kind of where it gets really confusing. I think the message, and I think where we're going to work in terms of our messaging as well, is that every child can access a diploma. And so how we name it is sort of less important, because I think there's how we talk about it to families and to students, and how we have to sort of internally between districts and CDE identify it. So let me sort of address that, because that's kind of a larger issue. So I think what's exciting and the conversations we should be having with parents and families is your child is eligible for a diploma. We just have to figure out how to get them there. Right. So it could be that they are, and for many children, especially children who took and students who took the alternate assessment, a lot of times that door was closed for them. Like they were eligible for the alternate assessment, and then we would decide when they were 14 or 15, oh, well, you are a diploma track student or a not diploma track student. I think that was pretty common. And so now we're sort of shifting that and saying, okay, how do we find ways for students to access a diploma? And we're not going to call it an alternate diploma, we're just going to call it a diploma. And that could be, if they are eligible for the alternate assessment, that could be this pathway that looks at more local requirements. If they are not eligible for the alternate assessment, it could be through alternate coursework and alternate performance tasks. What we don't want the message to be, obviously, is, well, if you put more kids into the alternate diploma, then obviously they can access this. It's really more about how can we ensure that children are accessing a diploma that they need and that fits what their needs are. When we talk about the work that WestEd presented, the alternative coursework or alternative performance tasks, it's really about ensuring that students can be enrolled in courses like all students can be enrolled, but that the teacher and the school is modifying some of the ways that children show that they're proficient. And that could be, I think, the description I said, instead of writing an essay, could they do a presentation? Instead of, instead of having a set of tests over the course of a year, they might have like a binder or a project that is sort of cumulative over the year to show that they are meeting the requirements from that course, and they can show that they passed that course. Because sometimes that's what keeps students from accessing the diploma. It's not that they are unable to pass the courses, is that the performance tasks we have doesn't allow them to show their proficiency. So I think that's kind of how we're talking about it with we should be talking about it with parents and families. Like, how do we help your child find the pathway to a diploma? And there's lots of ways to get there. Now, when it comes to how we communicate that between districts and CDE, is that we have to know which children are accessing the diploma through what was previously called the alternate diploma pathway, because the U.S. Department of Education requires us to report which students receive the diploma that way. And that is a requirement under the Every Student Succeeds Act. And so we have to identify which students were eligible for the alternate assessment who received a diploma underneath that education code that we passed. And so that's some of the conversations that we have on the back end with districts and how they sort of are flagging the students. But in terms of how we speak to parents, it should be, how do we get your child to a diploma? And the diploma that they receive looks just like every diploma. There's no difference there. And there's no difference in the experience for the student.
So thank you. So just sorry to interrupt, just to clarify, I guess my question then on this part is, for these students who do need to still be identified for the Every Student Succeeds Act, these are students that would then still qualify for services through age 21, correct? Is that
correct? Right. So that's really what's important, because we want to be able to flag those students as still eligible for receiving services under IDEA, because the authority for us to be able to do that exists within the Every Student Succeed Act bill. So
I guess that's the question as a parent, because that's the big fear I'm hearing from other families of, how do I know that I'm on the track where they are able to get the diploma, but also continue to receive services? So I suppose as soon as that kind of wording or identification is available, that we are able to to make it clear to the families especially that they would still be able to continue services, because I think that's part of the confusion and the fear is that these families would lose those services if they think, oh no, now I'm on, the diploma track that they weren't able to be on before, whereas they really wouldn't be losing services. And so I think we appreciate any help in being able to understand. We don't like labels, but yet we need to identify a track, even if, we're excited that they'll be able to get a diploma, but they're also worried about losing services. So thank you for
and I think it's a valid point. I think you could probably tell I'm trying to sort of like a gymnast on the balance beam, trying to thread that needle of saying, okay, we're not calling it anything because I think that label has become very sensitive, but also that we need to ensure that those students are their diploma is identified for the purpose of our reporting, but also so that they can still access all of their transition services through IDEA. Oh, and then the second question, part of your question was, what is the timeline? I don't know if we have the timeline for the West Ed work. I do think that they're going to work on trying to get those recommendations out this year. So, but I can work with them to identify that and report back to you all.
Great. Thank you so much.
Commissioner Snipes?
I'm going to let Hamilton go first because I believe she has a comment directly related to this conversation.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Thank you. Not to beat this to death, but I just kind of want to go give my opinion on the naming of the various ways to go about getting a diploma, because there is so much confusion around the naming and the idea of kind of like referring to it, from an administrative behind the scenes way in certain terms, but then with parents other ways, and not giving parents their verbiage for how to request or see what the various options are and who's eligible and what that means. I think that there needs to be really clear delineation between all of the options. And I have spoken to parents who have gone to their schools seeking kind of this alternative pathway to diploma, and the schools don't even really know that much about it, and they can't clearly communicate and talk about what it is or what it's called. I hear people talking about an alternate diploma, an alternate pathway to diploma. There's just so much confusion, and I feel like it's really important that we delineate all the options, who is eligible for what it means if you go down that path, and that internally and administratively, you're speaking about it the same way that we are telling parents about the options. So everybody's speaking the same language. I think one of the things that's so overwhelming to parents is we don't know a lot of the language and how to ask for things or what the options are, because there is this secret coded education language. And I feel like all of this is suddenly getting kind of pulled into that, where it's like, how do you ask for what you want when you don't know the language to ask for it?
Yeah. And I hear what you're saying. And I think we're trying our best. It's harder when you have to use the same words to describe three very different things. And we were a little bit opposed to removing the words alternative diploma pathway, because it did help us to differentiate for folks in our communication. And that is what makes it a little more challenging. So I think that's where we're trying to just find our way. We've done a lot of outreach with SELPA and disseminating FAQs on our listserv. And I think this is one of the areas we'll be working with our FECs a little bit around. I know that you will know that we now have FECs in every county. So this is going to be part of some of the discussions that we're having. So no, I appreciate you highlighting it.
Commissioner Snipes.
Thank you for sharing about the success around the EAP grant and having it reinstated. I think it's important for everyone here to know as well that there's about a 40% of what the original proposal was that's being sent out to LEAs. And so there are significant struggles around reconfiguring budgets. So just knowing that there are LEAs that are really excited about having any of the funding, and they really advocated for themselves and received the funding back into the budget, which is great, but they are also scrambling to try to figure out areas in which they can reconfigure their budget to work with the plans that they had in place. And we have to give kudos to the LEAs who received the funding because they're doing amazing and they're very creative. And I also just have to, in general, the early childhood world is always creative because there's generally an expectation that funding is going to be cut first from early childhood. So just thanking the state in general for giving any type of funding back into that when there was such a concern that it was going to go away completely. And then just noting the barriers that exist to access for educators, families, early childhood folks around that, the percentages and what we're seeing in service provision. There really is a division between the K-12 system and the early childhood system as far as access to knowing how to report, knowing where to report, when to report, and even around responsibility for service provision. So I think that we're doing a really good job to start that work, and we just have to keep the work moving forward, making sure that early educators have access to the same professional learning opportunities as anyone else would around special education provision and reporting. And then just really elevating them when they're doing something well. We have several LEAs in our state who are doing early childhood services and work very, very well. So continuing to elevate them, like ACSE has done a great job of recognizing those folks and elevating. And I just think that continuing to do that and giving those real life on the ground examples to early educators who maybe have not had access to those types of examples is going to be really beneficial moving forward. And just figuring out ways to work together when we know that there is a division between the educational side of things and the social services sides of things when we're working in early childhood. That's also another consideration for us to make and to advocate for.
And I do love the shout out to ACSE. They've been doing really good work in the space and trying to sort of bridge some of that gap. Every time I find a little bit of early education dollars for support, I'm like, how can ACSE use this? And they're always like, yes, let's do more. So I love the idea of how much they expand their good friends.
Thank you, Commissioner Snipes. Any additional comments or questions? All right. Shiloh, we appreciate you stepping in as always and look forward to the October presentation, which I know you're already working on, or you and the team. So much more to come. We will close out this item, and I'll ask Denise if you could share the slide for any public comments for those who are online, and anyone in the physical location at the department, if you wish to make a public comment, please begin lining up.
There are no public commentators in the room.
Okay. We'll wait about 30 seconds for anyone calling in. Are there any callers?
There are no callers at this time.
Okay, with that, we will close public comment on this item. We are still running a bit ahead on our agenda, and so it's actually great insight. I want to honor our 1:05 1 o'clock general public comment time that we've committed to as a fixed time. At this point, I would like to begin the conversation for our commissioner study sessions, specifically to talk about ACSE liaison assignments, ACSE committee assignments for 24-25, and general update from operations and planning related to a bylaw change connected to the election process that we've talked about for the past few meetings. So I'll open up that item. We will go as far as we can go, take our lunch break, have general public comments. If there's anything that still needs to be addressed in our study session after the lunch break, we'll wrap that up and move into agenda building and then adjournment. All right, so I'll start with the bylaws committee. I thought it'd be a pretty straightforward process to make changes to the bylaws. It is not, for a number of reasons. And I want to take a moment and just appreciate Kate Dove, staff to the State Board of Education, for her insights and supports. Some of the lessons that I learned, there are a number of versions of our bylaws that have been updated over the years. One of the drafts for the election committee that I began working on was from an outdated version of the bylaws that did include some changes that had been made in 2019. Based on that experience, I paused in proposing any bylaw amendments today so that we can make sure we have our sea legs underneath us, so to speak, and in terms of having the right document. And based on the initial dipping our toes into that work, I recognize the need for us to rely on SBE and CDE staff to ensure our bylaws not only reflect our intentions, but also are consistent with general good practice for bylaws, and that we're considering all of the moving pieces that need to be considered when adjusting our bylaws. Some of the other areas that popped up with the role of student commissioners being voting members right now, needing to have intentional language related to student commissioners in terms of which activities are general activities for all commissioners to participate in, like committees and liaison assignments, and what might not be an appropriate role for a student commissioner, such as chair, vice chair, holding an office. And so just being thoughtful around how those references play out through the bylaws, so that if we make one change in Article 1, it doesn't create a conflict in Article 15 or cause an unintended consequence. So I'll continue to work with SBE staff and CDE staff on some proposed revisions for the election process, and we'll try and highlight any other areas that should be considered for updating to bring back to the full commission for review after we've had a chance to kind of go through it with a finer tooth comb and be very intentional. So that's the update on the bylaws work. The change for election committee that we've all discussed, we still have time to implement this year. And so that will be coming back before us at our October meeting. Any questions on bylaw committee? Janine?
It's not a question, but I know I was mentioning yesterday, given the fact that this new virtual world, perhaps also considering that the people online need to, if they could have voting rights, because I don't know if that's doable as part of the bylaws, and just moving towards that as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Janine, for highlighting that as well. It's our understanding that when we are participating as commissioners, whether we are in the room or virtual, we are able to weigh in. There was some confusion earlier, but we are able to participate in the deliberation and decision-making, but being intentional and explicit around what that language needs to look like, so that future iterations of the commission don't have the same questions that we've navigated through in our hybrid world now. Any other comments or conversation related to bylaw updates? It's always a fun topic. All right, Russ.
Sorry. There was a conversation that I had with Kate where I was wondering around, like, we are all brought into the commission as representatives of particular areas. And if we are at any time no longer an official representative of those organizations or those areas, are we still able to serve on the commission through the end of term, or do we need to leave in the middle of a term?
Yeah, so just to make sure everyone understands, or has clarity, if I am appointed by my appointing body because of my professional work, I'm a special ed director. If I transition into a role where I'm a principal now, does my appointment status change? Am I still able to serve? As I understand it now, we all serve at the pleasure of our appointing bodies. And so I think the practice right now is if there is a change in your status that was the basis of your appointment, alert your appointing body, and they would make, or the appointing body would make the decision in terms of your continued role. In my experience, they support and respect the benefits of having continuity. And so whether you're able to finish out a term or be reappointed is at their discretion. But in the past, when there have been various changes, it's not, okay, well, you don't get to attend the next meeting because you're no longer a school psychologist. So, but that's an area we wouldn't be able to necessarily clarify in our bylaws because each appointing body has their own guidelines, practices, and bylaws that they're adhering to. See, Commissioner, I'm sorry.
Follow-up question there. Is there a reality where we could put the guidance that you just gave us in the bylaws to like make that very clear?
If we put it in our bylaws, it's not binding on the appointing bodies.
Okay.
Since they determine our terms, we wouldn't be able to have language that says, if I'm appointed and there's a change, the state board needs to honor my appointment through the end of the term because that's under their purview.
Yeah, sorry, the part that I was recommending adding in there is like, if there is a change, you need to go to your appointing body and then.
I got you. Well, I will take that note, and we're going to be working, side by side with State Board and CDE folks around clarifying and making sure that we align that. But I have that noted. Commissioner Hamilton?
Kind of bouncing off of that is an issue I'm currently dealing with when your appointing body changes and you're kind of left in this place of confusion of if you're continuing your regularly appointed appointment. Do you just continue as usual?
Yeah, and this is my experience, and some of the other longstanding commissioners can also share. There tends to be some overlap between, appointments and different processes or the different appointing processes, and the practice has always been commissioners have continued their service until the appointing body says, "Thank you, no need to attend the next meeting. We've appointed someone else for that, for the slot that you're currently filling." Because sometimes there is overlap. If I'm in my first appointment, the reappointment process might extend beyond my initial appointment date. If my initial appointment ended December 31st, my appointing body may still be going through the process through February and March of the next year. And so past commissioners have continued to serve until the appointing body gives a definitive response.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions, thoughts around bylaws? Okay. With that, I would, in the virtual folder, there are two documents, and I will start with the document that's referenced, the 24-25 ACSE committee assignments. Please note, this says draft at the top. One of the responsibilities of the chair of this meeting is to assign committees for the next year. The approach that I took in the initial draft is continuing on folks who are the ACSE Impact Award, continuing on the past co-chairs unless I heard differently, and then leaving a number of areas kind of somewhat open for invitation and discussion. The standing committees for ACSE are Operations and Planning, chaired by the chair and vice chair, Policy and Legislation, is chaired by the vice chair and an additional commissioner on policy and ledge. I added committees for each of our priority areas. So you will see mental health, emotional and behavioral health, continuing on with Elizabeth Estes and Janine DePaulian. Student and family voice, as Gloria was appointed previously for liaisoning with the FACs. And so I added Gloria and Saran, so we have both student and family representative. Added a committee for equity and inclusion, literacy, the statewide system of support. Elections is also a standing committee. The ACSE award, then the annual report, and then the ACSE bylaws. One other note, you see an asterisk by some of the committees assigning a responsibility if you're co-leading a committee in a priority area. Those co-chairs would take point on helping coordinate invitations for presentations and participation at ACSE meeting. We will still have our corporate agenda building, but the chairs, for example, of the Emotional Behavioral Health Committee may have a series of topics and presentations that they believe are in ACSE's interest, that they would take lead on coordinating and identifying who those presenters might be. So I'll pause there to make sure the thoughts from inside my head are translating appropriately. Any questions or lack of clarity? All right. Seeing no questions, the areas where there are no co-chairs listed, specifically our priority areas, equity, inclusion, literacy, and the statewide system of support. Is there anyone who would like to volunteer to co-chair either of those committees? Commissioner Sorted?
Literacy?
Literacy, all right.
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton?
I also was going to say literacy. Very important topic to me, particularly for students with the most significant support needs.
Thank you. Commissioner Snipes?
Statewide system of support and/or equity and inclusion.
Commissioner Oyakawa?
Equity and inclusion, but I would really want to be a co-chair and not a solo chair. So someone please, if not, if Heather ends up being in the other one. Thank you.
Any other volunteers? Commissioner Liu?
You haven't named it yet, but I'm interested in being a co-chair for elections.
Okay.
And hopefully someone will join me.
I have you down. Commissioner Notch?
That's great timing, Commissioner Liu. I was going to also volunteer for elections.
I have you both down for Elections Committee. Just change my view. Any other hands raised? And while there are co-chairs, because of our work session structure, we'll be having open conversations, and no commissioner is precluded from contributing to the work. We just need to obviously adhere to Bagley-Keene and avoiding serial meetings and creating those challenges. So Commissioner Snipes, I have you for both the equity and inclusion and the statewide system of support. And is there anyone who would like to participate in the annual report committee? And I might extend this to annual report and communications. Don, I'm kind of volunteering you just because
I was going to say I'm always happy to participate in that.
I wasn't actually trying to volunteer for more. I actually just wanted to ask if at some point we can get a list of who the prior liaison or the prior committee chairs were, so we can get some continuity and share information from what has been going on beforehand.
Great request. Based on my knowledge and file keeping, I think this is the first time we've actually had everyone listed. So, and so I would like to make this a standardized practice for us at this meeting. Just list it. Maybe past chairs had it somewhere, but I think it tends to stay in personal files. So we'll make sure that this stays in the virtual folder for all of us. As I'm including everyone's name, I will pass it off to Denise to make sure we all have access to this for reference. Commissioner DePaulian?
Question. I'm not sure because I can't get the virtual folder right now, but is the assessment committee on there as a committee?
No, it is not, but it can be.
Okay, so I would suggest that the assessment interest holder committee. So if somebody wants to volunteer for that.
And were you soliciting a volunteer with you?
No, I'm just soliciting it for everybody else because it's more about like the school assessments, the different types of assessments that they have within the schools. It's not like psychological processing like assessments. It's more about the interest holders and assessment development and the different tools that they use.
So like ELAC, standardized assessments.
You know what the word is escaping my mind right now, but it's the one that they take every year. Is it the SBAC?
Yeah.
Okay, SBAC. There you go. Who would be more knowledgeable in that area, in that sense? I volunteer somebody.
And it could be that this becomes a shared responsibility in our partnership with CDE, who keeps us abreast, not just the special ed division, but they'll reach out to ACSE directly to keep us, informed of changes or need for input. And so it's possible through our liaison work with CDE and SBE is how we can stay abreast of what's happening in the world of assessment. I'll keep it on the list of potential committees because I know there are some commissioners who aren't present today. And we will revisit this at our October meeting. So I'll run through the updates that we've talked about. For the Equity and Inclusion Committee, I have Christine and Heather. For the Literacy Committee, I have Barbara and Don. Statewide System of Support, I have Heather. And still looking for a co-chair just so that we have backup. Commissioner Wilkins, is that a voluntary?
Yeah.
Thank you, Matt. So we have Heather and Matt. The Elections Committee, we have Sarah and Betty. The ACSE Impact Award, we have Russell and Don. The annual report, we have Don and myself. And the ACSE bylaws, I will assign to myself. And thank you for joining me, Vicki, in coordination with SBE and CDE. Okay, so I will update this afternoon and send it out to everyone so we have this to refer to. So with that, it is 11:45. We'll take our lunch break as committed in the agenda. We'll take our break from 11:45 to 1 o'clock. When we come back at 1 o'clock, we'll have our general public comment, finish up with our liaison assignments and agenda building for the October meeting. And I'd also highlight any input that you might have for the final draft of the annual report. It's in the virtual folder for your review. There is one more minor revision that I was alerted of this morning that is not material that's being made. So there will be one more change specific to, there's a description of how long the Supporting Inclusive Practices project has been in place that needs to have a date amended. So outside of that change and any input from you, we would move forward with publications so that we would have the reports available to us as we're working with our various partners throughout the state and making sure that it's broadly available for everyone. So it's 11:45 on the nose. We will pause and see everyone back. I should be back at 12:55, 12:58, so that we can roll into general public comment at 1 o'clock. Thanks, everyone. Good afternoon. We have completed our lunch break and we'll be moving into general public comment. This is a time-specific opportunity for general public comment to ensure that any members of the public who have been following the meeting know that there is a set period where their voices can be heard. I'll ask our teammates at CDE if you'd share the slide with the instructions, and anyone who happens to be in the room, if you would begin lining up.
We don't have anyone in the boardroom.
Okay, we will close public comment in the boardroom. Hold for a few more moments to see if anyone calls in.
Caller ending in 7841. If comfortable, please state your name and affiliation and begin public comment. Speaker, you'll have exactly 1 minute. Your time begins now.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Joanna French, and I'm Senior Director of Research and Policy Strategy with Innovate Public Schools. And I just wanted to call on behalf of Innovate and a coalition of special education organizations that are both co-sponsoring and supporting SB 445, a bill by Senator Portantino. We are very appreciative that you all have released the statewide IEP template and wanted to emphasize the need to ensure that that template is translated. Currently, as it's currently written, SB 445 would require the bill to be translated in the top 10 languages statewide. And so we're hopeful that we can get this bill passed and ensure the template is more accessible to districts and LEAs across the state in multiple languages. Thank you again so much for your advocacy to ensure this template is accessible.
Thank you. Caller ending in 4280. If comfortable, please state your name and affiliation and begin public comment. Speaker, you'll have exactly 1 minute. Your time begins now.
Hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hello. Okay, great. My name is Lisa Mosco-Barros. I'm the founder and CEO of Educational, a nonprofit dedicated to empowering families of students with disabilities. And I am urging that the template be translated, the IEP template be translated into the top 10 most commonly spoken languages in California. Written translations of IEPs is consistent with federal law, including IDEA, Title VI of the Federal Civil Rights Act of 1964, and the Equal Educational Opportunities Act of 1974, and providing LEAs with a pre-translated IEP template is a low-cost and efficient way for the CDE to support LEAs in ensuring the timely translation of IEPs. And this recommendation is also included in Senator Portantino's SB 445 that, as currently written, supports the timely translation of IEPs. I want to thank you all for your advocacy.
Thank you. There are no callers at this time.
Okay, with that, I will close general public comment. And I will restart the conversation we were having about committee assignments or co-chair committee assignments and liaisons. I wanted to let everyone know there's an updated document in the virtual folder that reflects the conversations we had before lunch. Please peruse that and just make sure I didn't miscapture anything. If everything's correct, then we will move forward with that version for our next meeting. And we'll work with CDE to potentially list these on the website so folks know who would be point or contact on various committees and topics. With that, I will transition into the liaison assignments. There's a document in the virtual folder, again, draft, and it is entitled 24-25 ACSE liaison assignments. It's a PDF. And the document summarizes kind of the liaison responsibilities. And this was a written document, a previous iteration that I've updated a bit, that calls out the 4 key responsibilities: maintaining regular communication, facilitate the exchange of information, sharing with our state agency partners, information from ACSE, reporting and documenting if I'm connecting with one of my liaison partners. Sometimes the organizations will provide a written report. Sorry, Commissioner Ding. I think that was an inadvertent hand raise, or?
Yes, just a very small thing. I was looking through the document. I'm not sure why for Cars Plus the S is lowercase. I think that's supposed to be capitalized for the full name of Cars Plus.
Thank you. I made that correction. So report and document, just summarizing any key points that the state agent or the agencies may pass on, or any documents that they provide for review. Commissioner Wilkins in the past has shared a summary from the SELPA Association that goes in the virtual binder that keeps us all informed. And then support collaboration or collaborative opportunities between ACSE and the organizations. Vice Chair Groff.
Yes. Sorry. I'd like to add Commission on Teacher Credentialing as also an agency, and in the past I have been the liaison. I'm happy to continue to serve in that capacity.
Thank you, Vice Chair Groff. I have it added on the live document. So, Commissioner Oyekala.
I was previously listed as liaison for low incidence disabilities. It was a different title, and I was told when I assumed that role was that my liaison was with California Hands and Voices, which is not a state agency or entity. So I wonder if that is why the designation is now changed to state special schools. I just wanted to clarify.
No, that isn't the driver. It was my attempt to capture, absolutely liaison with the state special schools, but wasn't aware of the previous liaison assignment, but no reservations in adding that to the list as well.
Okay. I mean, I think there's kind of overlap anyway with what that covers. So however you want to identify it is fine with me. And I guess it sounds like it's still a separate.
No, why don't we consolidate them?
Okay.
And there are some here that are themes or broad categories like mental health. There's not one designated point person or point agency. And so other agencies that you may need to connect with, including state special schools or the agency you referenced.
Okay. So I think, yeah, maybe if it goes back to the original title that I understood it was low incidence disabilities, that would capture both. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Snipes.
I think I have to start with a question, and that is, would we want to have a liaison for the statewide system of support, or would reporting out and hearing from them fall under that committee work that we're doing?
I think fall under that committee work, given the state's investment and the breadth of it. I think that as a committee, having regular contact and using that as the point person for or point people when coordinating presentations from the leads in the system of support.
Okay. And then as far as the early childhood, are we just going to leave that open and kind of, or do we need to identify specific groups within the early childhood realm that I might be working with?
I think that one is another broad category because there's a number of agencies, and I wouldn't want to be exclusive since there's not one clearly designated lead agency. Great.
And then I do have one more recommendation, the California Tribal Families Coalition. They presented with us this last year, and I see value in keeping those lines of communication open.
Can you repeat the name again? California
Tribal Families Coalition, CTFC.
Other thoughts or needs for correction? And this list is, and while we're listing these here, I'll be clear, this is for our organization, like internal organization. It doesn't preclude us from connecting with other bodies and agencies as it aligns or supports our work. Any other comments, feedback, clarification? Okay. With that, as I stated before, there are obviously some commissioners who aren't in attendance today. So we'll make sure to share this via email, and at our next meeting, ensure that it reflects everyone's input and affirmation of willingness to serve in that role. If your name is assigned on the list and want to have a conversation, or might suggest someone else someone else take lead on that liaison relationship, let me know offline. We'll have a one-on-one. Additionally, if anyone needs to know who to contact and who the point person might be for different organizations, also connect with me offline, and I can facilitate an introduction if that would be helpful for anyone. All right. Unless there's any additional comments or questions. Oh, one last thought. Looking at our appointing bodies, so like Assembly staff, Senate staff, State Board of Education, I selected someone who was appointed by that body to be the liaison interface because of a pre-existing relationship. So that was just, I wanted to give some rationale behind that. While there are multiple appointees for each appointing body, tried to divvy up the workload so we weren't having commissioners have 5 different liaison responsibilities, so trying to balance it a bit. All right, with that, scanning the internet, not seeing any hands raised, we will move forward with this list as our working document right now, or working assignments for liaisons. You will have the final report in your hands early next week, or in your inbox, as one of the first opportunities you may have to reach out, share that information, or share the report with them. And if it's a new connection, I've found it's just a great resource to kind of introduce and kind of kick off the relationship in terms of providing information about ACSE and opening up conversations with our statewide organizations. So with that, I will update the list, and hope you don't hear my dogs. I will also do a last check and make sure everyone's last name is spelled correctly. I did my best to copy and paste.
No, it's okay. It's just with so many vowels, it often gets misspelled. So no big deal.
We will close our work session time unless there are any other items for work session and move into our agenda building. So as we move into agenda building, I want to obviously solicit input and thoughts, and also recognize that we have some new committee assignments and want to provide some space for the co-chairs to have a conversation and potentially develop a plan for the year. If there's a sequence of presentations that you would like to coordinate or invitations you would like to extend for the area you're co-chairing, I want to leave space for that. And so as we are proposing agenda items for the October meeting, keeping in mind there'll be some other additions or suggestions that will come in after the meeting. In the virtual folder is a timeline for presentations that Denise has created for us. We'll update that so that we add an additional step so that if you are going to be proposing a presentation and we're suggesting one as a committee chair, there's just a period of time that the team would need that information so we can finalize the agenda and make sure we have space and are divvying up the time slots. So we'll work on that process in our next check-in with CDE and get information out to the full commission. With that, moving into October, we know that we have at least one presentation from the department related to the annual performance report. With that, I will open up the floor and ask you just kind of raise your hands for any other suggested agenda topics for the October meeting that are top of mind today. Vice Chair Groff.
Thank you so much. I would like to request that we have a presentation from the consultant from CTC on the Education Specialist Program to discuss about the shortage and in terms of interns, permits, and so forth, with a breakdown in terms of mild to moderate education, extensive support needs, and so forth. William Hattrick, who is the consultant, might be the logical person to come and make a presentation on that. Thank you.
Okay. And Vice Chair Groff, I'll rely on you for making the connection and facilitating that presentation.
You do so.
Okay. Any other suggestions at this moment? Christine?
Sorry, not a suggestion, just a question. You said that we have in the folder the kind of the outline of the timeframes for the next meeting that we're working from. I don't see it. I'm not sure what it's supposed to look like.
Excellent. I misspoke. It is from the previous meeting. It's a holdover. So we'll get the updated timeline. You can see the document, the important ACSE deadline presentation dates. That's for the June meeting. My mind went to October, so we're going to develop that timeline, and that's the information we send to presenters around here are the dates we need your title and blurb for the agenda, and when we need the slide deck or any materials to include in the virtual folder and make available for the meeting.
Okay, so that would be in June?
That's for June. We create one for each meeting, so subsequent to this meeting, everyone will get the timeline for developing the agenda when you're reaching out to someone who might be presenting. Like Vicky made a suggestion. She can let them know we need your titles of your presentation and description and presenters by September 15. And we need your slide deck by September 20th for inclusion in the agenda.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Liu. You're muted.
I'm not sure what the qualification is to make presentations, but I can suggest the Friendship Foundation, which is located in the South Bay of Los Angeles. They have some major projects coming up. They are They support parents and families who have children and young adults with special needs by providing a safe, accepting, and inclusive environment where they can enjoy sports, art, music, and many other social programs with their peers. They have a lot of volunteers, and they have 2,500 students involved with 77 friendship school clubs and over 17 years of history. I'm just thinking they could come in and present to us because they're building this huge building in Redondo Beach for training staff or something like that. But I don't know what the criteria is, or if this is even something of interest to this commission. So,
and obviously we can do a little research and find out more information. But it sounds like it might be an extended learning opportunity program or some community-based program that's supporting students with disabilities that could be worthy of uplifting as something potentially to replicate. So we have very loose guidelines as a commission in terms of deciding who we extend invitations to and how it supports our strategic plan and items that we want to uplift.
Yeah, they support the kids and of teenage years only, and they're building like a multi-million-dollar facility to help train teachers for special education or something like that. So I thought we might be interested, and I can look into it if it's something that we want to do.
Yeah. If I could ask you to do some initial research and potentially share an email with me, and we can have the conversation and see what comes of that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hamilton.
As we continue to push forward with our priority around literacy, I would love to see more presentations for kind of techniques and ways of going about literacy instruction, particularly for students with the most significant support needs, which I feel like are often overlooked even when talking about literacy for all. My daughter attended a camp this summer that was a literacy-focused camp for students with significant support needs who used AAC, and the literacy instruction was embedded in an inclusive camp experience where they got the full camp experience, and it was under the guidance of Dr. Karen Erickson, who is the author of Comprehensive Literacy for All. I don't know if she's the person we want to reach out to for that presentation, or if there are other ideas of, people within the state who are doing good work around literacy for all. But I would love to see something along those lines.
Absolutely. Thank you. Don't see any other suggestions now, and assuming I know a number of you, the wheels are turning and you want to have an opportunity to check in with your co-chair. So in the next week or so, we will probably week after next, just thinking of my schedule and trying to get some time with the CDE team. We'll send out the timeline for the agenda development in terms of outreach with folks. And if you and your co-chair identify a presentation that you would like to suggest, feel free to shoot me an email and we will begin working on it. Good. All right, with that, I will close agenda building for this moment, and move into item 15, our last general public comment for the day. And I will make the assumption that no members of the public have arrived in the boardroom in the last 20 minutes.
That is correct.
So we will close public comment in the room and hold for anyone calling in online.
There are no callers at this time.
Okay, with that, I will close public comment. I will express my appreciation on behalf of the commission to those of you who are joining us online for your engagement and participation in the meeting. Commissioners, as always, thank you so much for being here and being involved in the work that we do at ACSE. To our teammates at CDE, in the control room, and department staff and state board staff, thank you so much for your support, as well as the captionists and interpreters. We appreciate each and every one of you, and we'll see you soon. Be well, stay safe, and take care. Bye-bye. Meeting adjourned.